As the heavy offensive of Pokrovsk continues, the Russian military continues to target Zaporizhzhia and, most importantly, the nuclear substations of one of Europe's largest nuclear power plants. Overall, there's also an understanding that Russia is learning its lessons and changing battlefield tactics. To talk about the latest developments when it comes to Russian offensive and military, Elisabeth Braw, senior fellow at the Atlantic Council, joins me on the program. Good evening, Elisabeth. Thank you for joining me.
Good evening.
So we've had a statement from the Ukrainian Foreign Ministry saying, quote, deliberate strikes on civilian energy facilities that directly affect the safe operations of nuclear installations bear the hallmarks of nuclear terrorism and constitute a grave violation of the international humanitarian law. This is one of the most dangerous games that Russia could potentially play. Why is the Kremlin okay with posing such nuclear risk to the whole wide region targeting Zaporizhzhia? I mean, this is not just Ukraine that would be actually affected.
No, it's not just Ukraine that would be affected. And what has changed when it comes to Russia's behavior is not just a sort of change when it comes to whether or not to damage nuclear facilities or facilities connected to nuclear power plants. It is much more fundamental than that, which is that Russia has essentially decided that it doesn't care about the consequences, it doesn't care about condemnation by other countries, and that's why it can continue attacking substations as it's doing in Ukraine, but also engage in all kinds of unethical, immoral, illegal behavior against other countries in Europe, including Poland. So it's all part of the same strategy and the same pattern, and that makes it incredibly dangerous.
So as we're looking at the situation on the front lines and as we're looking at the Russian military, do you think that Russians, after 3.5 years of war, have learned something and they're applying changes to the battlefield? Are we at a turning point when it comes to their tactics? What do you think?
Well, what we've seen for 3.5 years is the Russian military continuing to learn. They learned the moment they encountered far stiffer resistance in Ukraine than had been promised them. But they've kept learning ever since and kept adapting. And what is important to remember is that they are good at learning, but the answers to the lessons they are learning include some pretty unethical and immoral and sometimes illegal actions. But because those actions are sanctioned or permitted or even ordered by the highest decision makers, then soldiers are they essentially have carte blanche to carry them out. So it is a really quite dangerous situation. And if you look at other recent wars, in the past century or so, you had at least some pretense by the warring parties to abide by the laws that govern warfare. Russia is showing no such pretense, and if you have made the decision not to adhere to the rules of war, then you can only whatever comes next can only be as alarming as what we've seen until now, or even worse.
Mm-hmm. So according to Union agency, Russians are starting to use more armored vehicles to advance in the city of Pokrovsk. This is something that we've been focusing on here on TVP World when we were covering the subject. This is meant to speed up Russia actually taking land away from Ukraine, taking the territory. So do you think that Russia will be more successful when it actually puts more armored vehicles to use? We know that they're trying to combine them together. The number is increased. Do you think that this is something that is going to actually shift the balance of power on the front line?
Well, what we're seeing the Russians do over and over again is shift resources to where they are most needed, and that's not surprising. That's what armed forces do. Ukraine does that too. You have to shift resources, whether men or equipment, to where they are most needed. But clearly, with this, Russia is showing that this is a priority for Russia at this moment. Ukraine has been. Ukrainian officials have been saying that it is a precarious situation for Ukraine there at the moment, and with Russia allocating more resources, it it is a pivotal moment and a quite critical one for Ukraine.
Mm-hmm. With sanctions affecting Russia, how is the defense industry boding with shortages in access to technology? How is that affecting the outcomes in the battlefield? I mean, Russia is actually isolated in one way from the West when it comes to subparts, when it comes to the military, but it has other countries that are supplying. So how is that balance playing out?
This is a major consideration to bear in mind. We Western countries often think that if we impose sanctions, the country that is being sanctioned will suffer mightily. Well, Russia is not suffering mightily because it has been able to trade quite intensively with other countries, because there are plenty of other countries that are willing and able to trade with it, including countries that can supply the technology, the parts, the components, or at least some of them that the West has sanctioned. And this is the reality today. 40 years ago, Western countries were the only economically strong countries in the world. Could sanction another country and that country would suffer mightily. Today, it's a completely different situation. There is China, there is India, there are the countries in the Middle East, in the Gulf, and elsewhere, who are willing and able to trade with Russia, which is why Russia has been able to keep going all this time, including the Russian defense industry, because some of these countries have the technology, have the components, or at least some of them, and are willing to sell them to Russia.
When we look at fighting, when we are looking at the front lines, we cannot forget that it's not only about the technology, but also about the troops themselves. And this takes me to the next subject, the GOAT tactic that we've heard about when it comes to Russia. As we've learned from the press service of the 7th Airborne Forces Corps, I quote, recently information has surfaced that the enemy has started using female soldiers. These women dress as civilians and pose as local residents, carrying ammunition and batteries for radios in ordinary bags or plastic sacks. In intercepted communications, Russians refer to such operations as letting go of the GOAT. So there is definitely that happening on the front line as well. This also this increases the risks among civilians as well, isn't it? Because these soldiers are actually wearing civilian clothes and are being targeted.
Yes. So first of all, the most important thing to bear in mind is that it's illegal to have people participating in combat who are not dressed as soldiers. There is a clear division in the laws that govern war between combatants and non-combatants. Combatants wear uniform that show clearly for what country, with what country they are affiliated. And as we all know, that the uniform also shows the rank and the name of each soldier. You are not allowed to have soldiers or combatants masquerade as civilians. So this is quite serious. And again, it is connected to what we discussed earlier, which is that Russia has decided to not care about being a respectable country. And once you've made that decision, you have a carte blanche to conduct all kinds of illegal, immoral, and unethical activities, because who is going to stop you? Because condemning your actions is not going to have an effect, and nobody is in a position. Few countries are at the moment are in a position to stop Russia's military activities. Condemning the use of civilians as combatants, or disguising combatants as civilians, is illegal, but Russia doesn't care if we condemn it.
Thank you very much. This was Elisabeth Braw, Senior Fellow at the Atlantic Council. Elisabeth, thank you for joining me on the program. Pleasure as always.
Thank you.
And so this would be all for now here on World News Tonight. I'm Klaudia Czerwińska. Thank you for joining me tonight, and I hope to see you back here on TVP World for more news and features very soon.